This is Rosanna Arquette, and you're listening to Everything Fab Four on Salon.com.
Welcome to Everything Fab Four, a podcast focused on fun and intelligent stories about the Beatles. I'm your host, Ken Womack, music culture columnist for Salon.com and a Beatles scholar and historian. No other band, or popular phenomenon for that matter, has enjoyed the global impact the Beatles have and continue to have more than 50 years later. They are part of our human fabric. They created music that continues to bring people together, and just about everyone has their own Beatles story to tell, some that are surprisingly deep and unexpected. This show seeks to draw those stories out in interesting and insightful ways. Remember, it's a Beatles world, and everyone has a story.
The Beatles let it hang out. And they were not afraid to say some of their favorite artists were African Americans. That helped us out a lot. When black musicians went to Europe, they were well accepted and known about already because of people like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, who touted them as being, creators of an incredible music.
Today's guest is American jazz fusion guitarist and singer-songwriter George Benson. A native of Pittsburgh, Benson began his career at age 19, embarking on a long-running career as one of America's most vaunted musicians. At age 21, he recorded his first album entitled The New Boss Guitar, followed by It's Uptown with the George Benson Quartet. In 1969, he recorded a much-beloved homage to the Beatles' Abbey Road LP with The Other Side of Abbey Road. The album's cover art features a photograph of Benson by Eric Miola as the musician crosses East 53rd Street in New York City. During the same period, he also recorded a popular cover version of Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit. Things really took off for Benson in the mid-1970s, beginning with the LP Bad Benson, which topped the Billboard Jazz charts in 1974. With his 1976 album Breezin', Benson scored a triple platinum hit. A few years later, he earned a Grammy Award for his live rendition of On Broadway from his Weekend in LA LP. In 1980, Benson took the pop charts by storm with his studio album Gimme the Night. Produced by Quincy Jones, the LP yielded several hit singles, including the upbeat, jazz-infused title track. Lost for more than 35 years, Benson's latest LP, Dreams Do Come True, features an album's worth of orchestrations that were unearthed from the bowels of his archive. The collection includes Benson's takes on such standards as Autumn Leaves, At Last, My Romance, A Song for You, and the Beatles' Yesterday. Over the years, Benson has earned 10 Grammy Awards while seeing his career memorialized with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Welcome, George Benson. Did you grow up in a musical family? How did this all start?
Yeah, my mother was a singer, though she never did it professionally. She sang all the time. So that started me down that road of music. Everywhere we went, she went to a place that had live music. If it wasn't a church, it was a theater or even just a movie in the neighborhood. So that was my very beginnings. Then after that, I started playing music on the street corners of my hometown, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and everybody got to know little Georgie Benson.
And what instruments were you picking up first?
Well, first I had a great interest in the guitar, but my hands were too small. When I first started school, I think they tried to get me to play a violin, but I started playing by ear. They didn't like that. They wanted me to read the music only. So I was not good at that, so they kicked me out of the class.
And you played the ukulele too, right?
I switched to ukulele when I was 7 years old. My stepfather taught me to play. When he met my mother, I was 7, and he played guitar, but my hands were too small for that. So he found a ukulele in the garbage can and put it back together and painted it and put strings on it and taught me the first few chords. And that became my instrument of that time.
You know, I know that, and I don't know if you like this moniker or not, but you've been referred to as a child prodigy. That certainly has to be true in terms of when you first went to a recording studio, right?
And no doubt about it. They've been trying to get me in the studio even before I made my first record with RCA Victor in 1953. But by the time I was 7 and 8 years old, people had these makeshift studios, and I found myself inside a booth of some kind and hollering out some tunes and plunking on my ukulele.
And those survive, right?
Well, some of them, yeah, I'm shocked at how much of that stuff is still available. And I'm glad somebody had the sense to hang on to it because it's a great legacy for me.
You know, isn't that one of the interesting things about popular music, you know, and certainly in the days when you got started, and of course later, you know, obviously the Beatles and folks like that, nobody thought it was important, did they? So they would throw away tape and all sorts of paraphernalia.
Yeah, when the industry was new and they were feeling their way through things, remember my record company at that time was the biggest record company in the world. They were called RCA Victor, and they still use the picture of an animal sitting in front of a Victrola, the speaker of a Victrola, listening at the music. That's how far back that was. Well, since then, we've come light years, technically speaking, that is, because first of all, they don't make records like that anymore. They used to make records directly to a phonograph without tapes. Then came tapes, and led us eventually into the digital aspect. Now, who knows where they're going to go from here?
You know, it's hard to imagine what's next, right?
That is for certain. But I've seen some, during my years of playing on the road, I ran into guys with incredible ideas. I saw one invention that was so unbelievable, I'm shocked that it's not in everybody's household today. I'm sure that one day it will be. They have some geniuses out here who are working on the future, so I'm sure they're going to get this product one day will be in the house of most every music lover in the world.
What is it? I got to know. I want to get in on the ground floor.
Was actually a recording device. It had a way of taking electric energy from cloth strings. It picked up the vibrations and turned them into electric energy from cloth strings, plugged into nothing. All he did was take a magnet, which was not connected to anything, and he held it near a cloth string, and the string would amplify like unbelievable. The great part was no noise at all. So I expected one day to see that invention.
Well, especially with all the DIY stuff folks do at home these days.
That's true.
So, so those records were released with you being little Georgie, but your fingers must have gotten bigger, right?
Enough to make the guitar my number one instrument and the greatest challenge of my life. So it became a friend to me because I could change moods anytime I wanted to just by changing the song or a group of notes or chords or whatever I might think of. And so that I spent my life being occupied by figuring out where the guitar should be at this point in my life or any given point in my life. And I'm still doing that today.
That's right. It's a journey that never ends. Isn't that true?
That's true.
So is it true that an early influence for you was your sort of collaboration with Jack McDuff?
Jack McDuff was the one who took me out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He already had an organized organ combo, because he was an organist. And we had four pieces: saxophone, guitar, drums, and the organ. And we traveled around the country. I was 19 years old when he took me out of my hometown, Pittsburgh, and took me on a journey around the country and in some cases across the sea. So I got a chance to meet and be with people I never imagined. I got a chance to see my superheroes up close and personal and to learn from them because I saw the way they did things and it was much simpler than I imagined. So it gave me something to practice.
And who was that? Who was that hero? You?
All of them. I mean, many people. I met people at Count Basie, Wes Montgomery, Grant Green, Tal Farlow, Jim Hall, Kenny Burrell, and all of the keyboard players and saxophone players of that time, of our time, I should say.
What a privilege that must have been to be able to mix in those circles.
Never imagined that I would be in those circles, first of all. After a while, they started calling me a guitarist. And that was the biggest compliment I ever had in those days. I thought I was a guitar player. They said, no, the guitarist, George Benson, he sounds okay. There's a lot to be desired there, but he's coming along. That was the feeling I got when I read interviews about me.
Yeah, there's nothing like when they put that "the" in front, right? The actor Dave Womack or what have you. You're in then. So your first album comes out right in '64, about the same time those fellows were coming over the United States. What led to the making of that first record then, which is of course the new boss guitar of George Benson?
Jack McDuff's managers began to notice that I was one of the people who made his record start selling well. So they decided to do a record on me, but they kept Jack McDuff handy, so they put him on the album just to make sure that people got the message. This is Jack McDuff's guitar player. I think it was a good move. I don't think I was ready for my own album yet because I was still discovering. Remember, I was making the transition from a singer to a guitar player at the time. So my guitar playing benefited greatly for the 2.5 years I spent with them on the road.
So it was just night and day in a lot of ways from when you left and when you came back.
That's true. When I came back to my hometown, Pittsburgh, after being on the road for about a year, people expected me to start singing, but I had left the singing. Jack McDuff did not like singers. He said they took away from the quality of the band, or they made people pay attention to the singer, because a mediocre singer is more accepted by an audience than any instrument. So Jack McDuff said that was too much credit to give them, so he didn't want no singing in his band. He said, for certain, I don't want any singing in my band. So I learned to live with that.
And so for the recording, you have a number of original tracks on it, correct?
I do. I was used to writing my own tunes, shaping things the way I wanted them to shape. That made it easier for me to deal with them because I wrote it. But Jack liked it because a lot of it was blues oriented, which he made me respect. At the beginning, I didn't care, what the music was. It was either good or bad to me. As a matter of fact, I have readapted that vibe. But for Jack, it had to have a lot of blues in it, or else he wouldn't accept it.
I wonder if you could say a little more about it's either good or bad. I think there's something to that, right? What is that vibe? And if you could just say a few more words about it.
Well, the thing that makes me like a song is two great elements it must have. It's got to sound good and feel good. Those two it's got to have. I think if you have a good story to go with that, feel good and sound good, and you got the makings of a hit record. But it must have those two elements for me to begin to like a song or to listen to it.
I like that because people do make an emotional connection to music, don't they?
No doubt about it. It reminds them, first of all, it puts them in a state of mind that only they can relate to. They have a story or an incident that stays with them all of their lives in many cases. If your music touches that string or that concept or that idea, then you got a hit in the minds of the persons who are listening to your record.
And that's why folks, right? They have their song, the one that they love. Couples have their sort of musical interlude that they associate with their romance, etc. It's incredible how personal, these. You must have experienced that on the road, right? Folks telling you just how meaningful your music is to them.
I listen to people when they talk because that covers a lot of territory. You can't possibly know how your music is getting over on people unless one of them who's hearing it tells you what effect it is that draws them to you or that they like when they hear you play. So that gives me information to work on when I'm by myself in my room practicing guitar for hours, sometime at a time. I have something to keep in mind. Hey, I wonder how they're going to accept this. Do you think this is good enough? No. Ain't got enough blues in it. Ain't got no feeling. The melody isn't strong enough. All the elements.
Well, so here we are. It's 1964. You got your first album out. How did people respond back then?
I was so happy to have an album out because it's something I never, ever imagined that I would be considered a guitar player. And like I said, one man called me in his article a guitarist. He didn't particularly say anything great about me, but he called me a guitarist, and that did it. I said, oh, wow, I am a guitarist. I'm not only a guitar player. So I started practicing with that in mind. Would a guitarist play it like this? No, I got to add some more, prestige to this. Make it go over to people who are serious listeners, that kind of thing.
So when our friends, the Beatles, roll in then in February of that year, did you happen to catch them on the Sullivan Show?
I caught them on the Sullivan Show years later, but when they play or when I hear one of their songs, I had an imagination of these talented young people that when I finally heard them, they lived up to all of the things I imagined about them. First of all, they were excellent songwriters, and they were excellent performers of their songs. It couldn't have been done any better unless they added Ella Fitzgerald, who sang some of their songs later. She did give the songs a class that they probably would not have been able to do. But the songs were magnificent, and they fulfilled all the things I talked about earlier. They sounded good, they felt good, and they had great stories, the one about money, can't buy me love, and things like that. And yesterday, boy, it don't come no better than that.
And what is it about the stories, do you think, that we connect with?
With the Beatles you're speaking of?
Or just in general? You take your pick. You're George Benson.
Well, I have my own personal stories, but my stories come from a different genre, a different lifestyle. Remember, I am the son of slaves, generations ago who came to this country as slaves. I am one of their sons. And so things have been a little bit harder, a little more difficult for me because I was not welcome in all circles, but that was another challenge. And I had to face that too. It was very good for me though, because I went to a vocational school that had 1,400 Caucasian students and 30 African American students. So I had to learn how to get along with people, and I did. They called me for everything. When they wanted to play some music, they called me. George, you think you could play this song, man, on our show? We're having this Christmas show or some other kind of holiday show. I said, yeah, I think so. So I would play, and they loved what I was doing. So they called me Little Georgie Benson. the guitar player. And they watched me make my own guitar after my stepfather made my first electric guitar. I took his cue. When I say that, his the lessons I learned from watching him make that guitar, and I made my own guitar. I was about maybe 16 years old. And when I started working on it, everybody was skeptical. What is that you're making? I said, I'm making a guitar. And they looked at me like I was crazy, and they whispered and talked about it until first of all, I sent the diagrams down to the wood shop and said, cut this out for me. Because I was in a vocational school. That's where I learned my trade. So they cut it out for me, and I said, all right, stick this fingerboard on there for me. They did. I said, cut some holes up here so I can put my tuning pegs and do this and that. And so it came down to me putting the pickups on and the guitar strings on. So I brought that to my class. I was in commercial art at the time. That's my trade. My vocation is commercial artist. Mm-hmm. And I remember putting the strings on. They said, wow. They were kind of snickering. They said, this ain't gonna happen. They all crowded around my desk, and I put the strings on, put the pickup on, put the fingerboard on, not the fingerboard, but the guitar pick on, pick guard, that is, and the tailpiece. And I brought my amplifier from my house to the class, and I plugged it in, and when I hit the string, blang, the class went crazy. Man, that thing works, man. They were convinced that I was something different. Let's put it like that.
It's you mentioned the challenges of living in that period. I remind my students, I have the privilege of teaching the Beatles in the fall every school year, and I remind them that just because there was a Civil Rights Act, right? It's not like they pushed a button and everything changed. Life wasn't that simple, was it?
No. But I was so glad to be alive. And what I learned was, because I got into a few scrapes in school where I had to fight my way out of it, but I was little Georgie Benson in those days. And everybody I had a scrape with was bigger than me and tough. But what I appreciated most was after every scrape or fight we had, I'm fighting with Caucasians. Now, I'm an African American in a school with only 30 blacks and 1,400 Caucasians of different races and so forth and so on. After every fight, we got together and shook hands. I thought they were getting ready to jump on me and beat me up, the rest of the school. They said, all right, George, come over and shake hands. I said, what? They're not going to jump on me and beat me to a pulp. So I said, man, there's such a thing as reason. There's a reason for everything. So I began to see things from a different point of view. And most of the people liked me because of my talent. Matter of fact, the school itself used to recognize my talent. And if there's something music to be done, call little Georgie Benson first. So I appreciate it. I began to notice people had problems too. I wasn't the only one in the world, So when I started traveling,
go ahead. No, you go ahead, please.
So when I started traveling on the road, that worked in my favor because we worked in all kind of places and different races of people. And my attitude got me a long way, and it's still doing that today.
All I was going to say, and your story just reminds us, I wish we lived in a world where folks knew how to apologize and make up after a disagreement or a scrape. How refreshing that would be.
Yep, I'm looking forward to the day when mankind will be like that. So that's always in my mind. I think people react to what is real once they see that everything has a consequence. Do we want that consequence? Or is it easier to just say, to apologize and make up and be friends? Because the be friends is gigantic. That means we're going to have a good life. We're going to share the tremendous world that our God gave us. and all of the resources that we have in front of us, all the food you can eat. You don't have to eat the same food every day. You know, the variety is incredible. And we got all these challenges with these instruments, not just guitar. My favorite performers don't even play guitar. I like Fritz Kreisler on the violin. I like Charlie Parker on the alto saxophone, John Coltrane on the tenor, Wes Montgomery on the guitar. So there's so much variety and so many things to be joyful about until being negative is the last thing on my mind.
Yeah, time's too short.
Yes.
So in the 60s in particular, when there's so much change, certainly amplified, pun intended, by the music, how did you react when our friends the Beatles were going from, as you said, amazing songs like Can't Buy Me Love and Yesterday, and the next thing you know, they're playing Sgt. Pepper, and music of that ilk that seems more experimental? Did you just take it in stride, or did it open up your eyes a bit?
Well, everybody has the right to improvise and to express themselves. Their imagination comes into play. So everybody's trying to figure out, how did the Beatles come up with that stuff that they're doing? It wasn't just them. They had great people in back of them. George, the arranger they had was
George Martin. A great George, if ever there were one, huh?
Yes, he was tremendous. He put their music in a classical context and gave them prestige that they never could have achieved on their own. So life is like that. You don't know what's going to happen next, but if you don't put it out there, you'll never know. So the Beatles let it hang out. And they were not afraid to say some of their favorite artists were African Americans. That helped us out a lot. When black musicians went to Europe, when black musicians went to Europe, they were well accepted and known about already because of people like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, who touted them as being, creators of an incredible music.
So then what leads to you putting out in 1970 that incredible record, The Other Side of Abbey Road? How did that come into being?
My producer, the incredible Mr. Creed Taylor. Now, this man was already a genius. He took an organ player, his name was Jimmy Smith, the greatest organ player in the world at the time, and he turned him into a household word with the album, with the song called Walk on the Wild Side, which was a big band arrangement that was magnificently done. And he took Wes Montgomery, a jazz guitarist, and turned him into a household word with the song Going Out of My Head, which was not a jazz song. And Stan Getz became a superstar when Creed Taylor put him with bossa nova music, which nobody ever heard of before outside of Brazil, or very few people, I should say, by comparison. Bossa nova music became incredibly well accepted because of Stan Getz and Charlie Bird in those days. So when he came to me one day and said, George, I want you to take this album home and listen to it and tell me what you think. I was in his office at the time. I said, okay. So I took it home and I listened to it, and I came back the next day. I said, hey, man, everything on this album is a monster. He said, good, we'll do the whole album. I said, what? Because I know what that would do to me in the jazz world, because I was trying to be a jazz guitar player at the time. So
Sorry.
he said, all right, we're going to do the whole album. And he hired a chamber orchestra and Don Sebesky to do the arrangements. And so we did it all live in the studio in New Jersey. And it was a great experience, to hear those chamber orchestra players who were actually out of the New York Symphony Orchestra. It was so classy.
And that was at Van Gelder's studio, right? Englewood Cliffs.
That's right. Yeah, it's a fantastic studio that Creed Taylor was using for many, many albums he recorded. I'm trying to think of some of the big smashes that came out of there. Probably, Wes Montgomery, Walk on the Wild Side I believe, came out of that studio. A lot of Miles Davis's music came out of there in the early days, that is, I think. And many other people who I knew at the time which I got. Me and Freddie Hubbard, me and Stanley Turrentine, people like that. Hubert Laws. It was quite a studio, and there was nobody in the world quite like Rudy Van Gelder. He was somebody you had to learn to deal with because he didn't take nothing for no one. It had to be his way or the road.
So then, so you guys, you recorded this thing live, right? And pretty quickly.
That's right. We did all of our albums at Creed Taylor Studio or Rudy Van Gelder Studio were albums that we recorded probably in 2 days. In the old days, it was 1 day. We recorded from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock. We took a 1 hour lunch break from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and we recorded from 2 to 5. So we had 2 sessions in 1 day, and that was usually an album.
Wow.
And there's no wonder why those albums didn't sell well. We didn't have a chance to fix them. So,
well,
I say they didn't sell well, meaning they could have sold much more if we had a chance to work on them.
That's interesting. So you think that there was more potential in there?
Much more potential. But we were used to making records. That we were already working all the clubs on the East Coast and some on the West Coast and all throughout Middle America. And those are one-time only things. You go in and you do your stuff. You have to knock folks out on their first visit to hear you play, or else they wouldn't come back. So we were used to doing that. So studio, no difference. The only one factor that I wish was we got finished working in New York City at 4 o'clock in the morning. So that studio, we had to be at the studio at 10 o'clock. So we had to get our sleep or rest between 4 and 10 o'clock in the morning. That's only 6 hours. So we didn't get any sleep. We had to be in the studio. So we were making albums with sleep in our eyes.
Wow. To be young again, right?
Yeah.
So did you ever get any feedback from the Beatles about that great record?
That's one of the great rewards of my life. I became friends with Paul McCartney, who at one point when that album was released, got in touch with my people and said, "Tell Mr. Benson we enjoyed what he did with our music." Boy, what a reward that was for me. Then I knew I was on the right track. I was recognized by people who were successful musicians and experts at what they do. So that meant a lot to me.
That is beautiful. And I recall back when I first discovered the band thinking about, I wonder if there are any good cover versions out there. And somebody at some point or another said, well, nobody really covers them well, but I hadn't heard The Other Side of Abbey Road yet. That thing sizzles. It just, it really endures, that record.
It saved my career in more ways than I can think of. When Breezin' came out, people say, how come we don't know George Benson from this side? I've never heard this side of George Benson before. So they went back, see what it is I did. And because Abbey Road was not a jazz album, I didn't get any good vibe from jazz people. They criticized it and chopped it to pieces. But now, after Breezin', that was the only album that lived up to the quality of Breezin'. They discovered once there was a way to get back homeward. They said, man, George, that album should have been out years ago. It was. But they didn't get any airplay.
Yeah,
But it
that
stayed with
track.
me. When they heard it, they said, "Yeah, he's been there." We're the ones who didn't pay attention.
Isn't that interesting how records can have and music can have life at different times?
I've always believed that. That's the reason why I was not fearful when the album did not get grave reviews or rave reviews, and that it didn't, get what I thought it deserved. I knew that one day they would rediscover that album, and that it would mean something in my career. So I'm glad I did it.
Oh, I sure am too. And so much of your music is brings such joy. You know, the big hits like "Give Me the Night." Obviously, it comes easily to mind, or on Broadway or what have you. There's a sense of joy you have in your music, and I think that's what you brought to some of those Beatles tracks that they sort of needed. You know what I mean?
I think so. I always say to my friends and my so-called students or people who come to me for tips on guitar, in order to be great, you have to know what great is, first of all. And then you start heading in that direction and listen to and pay attention to what is great going on around you. So I started listening to nothing but the greats. Like I said, I mentioned Fritz Chrysler and Charlie Parker and John Coltrane, the best of the best. If I was going to get something, let it come from those. Let those guys be our teachers. So that really helped my success on the guitar.
And they're always there for us, which is, what's so wonderful. Music, life can be tough sometimes, but I think to myself, at least all these songs and records exist for me. They regenerate us in a lot of ways.
I believe so.
So tell us about this new album, now playing George Benson.
It's an incredible story. It started with a conversation I had with the great Quincy Jones. I said, "Quincy Jones, who is the greatest arranger in the world at the time?" No disrespect intended. He said, "George, there's two names, man." He said, "But one I think is right for you. His name is Robert Farnon." I never heard of him before. I had heard his music, but I didn't know what I was listening to. So I set out on a course to find who Robert Farnon was. It took me to London, England, where he now lived at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He was born in Canada. He had moved to London or England many years before I caught up with him. And he was living on an island off the coast of England called Guernsey. And I ran into one of his friends. He said, "Oh, yeah, he's my friend." And he said, "I will introduce you." So he did. He arranged 17 songs for me. He never heard of me before. That was a miracle. I had many, many hits in London, England, or all over, Great Britain and all over Europe. But that's not his sort of thing. But his friends told him that I was a very successful performer. So he agreed to work with me, and he wrote 17 arrangements, some of the most beautiful stuff I ever heard. This was 40 years ago.
Whoa. Okay, I didn't see that coming.
And I took those arrangements after I recorded them in England with the London Symphony Orchestra, all 87 pieces of the orchestra, with Mr. Robert Farnon conducting, Al Schmidt engineering. Al Schmidt is one of the best of all time. And man, what an experience that was. I took those tapes to New York, and here's another caveat. Let me see. This young fellow, what's his name now? He's one of the top rock performers in the world today. one of the last ones to become a superstar.
Hmm.
He was born in New Jersey.
Bon Jovi.
That's his name. That's his name, Bon
Which
Jovi.
Bon Jovi, who now has a rest stop named after him out here.
Get out of here.
I'm serious.
Well, anyway, Bon Jovi was the go-to man. He used to go get things for us when we needed them. You know, all kinds of coffee and tea and sodas and beer and all the machines we needed to work on the album. He worked on most of the album with me. He was a very, very kind young fellow. Never complained about anything. And when I kept hearing his name a few years later, I said, I wonder if that's the same guy who worked with us. And sure enough, it was. But it's just a caveat in the album. After that, I tried to present it to the record company, and they didn't want that kind of record. So they never got a chance to hear it. I put it in storage 40 years ago. 38 years after that, someone called me and said, Mr. Benson, what do you want us to do with this stuff we got in the warehouse? Do you want us to throw it out or sell it or what? I said, what stuff are you talking about? He said, you got some stuff here. But I didn't know it. I was paying all the bills all those years and didn't know it. And I said, read me some of the labels. He said, Robert Farnon. I said, that's it, man. Send me that stuff as soon as you can. So they put it on an 18-wheeler tractor trailer and shipped it to me out here in Phoenix, Arizona. And man, was I glad to get it. So far, I salvaged 11 songs out of it, but the material is spectacular.
Wow. That's great. What an origin story, right?
Yes, sir. It's great. One of the best things that happened to me in years. I thought I had lost it. But just for the sake of the remembrance of that great session we did in Wembley, England, at a tremendous studio on a console that was designed by Rupert Neve. It was one of the few ever made. It was a digital console. I tried to buy the console. He said no. The console cost $750,000. Today, that would be $2.5 million. You know, so he said, don't buy it. I'll make one for you that you're going to love. And he did. But anyway, after 38 years, I had this album in my hand. I had to dissect it and put things back together. And I found an old engineer friend of mine who came down from Northern California, and he helped me find all the parts, and he transferred them to digital, and we started mixing, and we came up with a beautiful album.
Everything Fab Four is presented by Salon.com, the premier news, politics, innovation, and arts website. For more information, visit everythingfab4.com, where you can learn more about our podcast and my latest Beatles-related book, Living the Beatles Legend, The Untold Story of Mal Evans. The Everything Fab Four theme song, Seize the Day, is provided courtesy of Black Rabbit, the high-octane Beatles cover band, an innovative psychedelic rock project from Rockaway Beach, Queens in New York City. Like what you heard today on Everything Fab Four? Be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, and recommend the show to your friends. Plus, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EF4 Podcast. Distributed by Salon.com, Everything Fab Four is a Wonderwall production. Remember, it's a Beatles world, and everyone has a story.